Okay, so here we've got the little bits of watercolor swatches that I've got here. And you can take, once you've got some color down, and put your color pencil down on top of that watercolor. And it just speeds things up a lot. If you're used to using water or color pencils, you'll know that it can be really time consuming just to get that base down to work on. So you can get it a little bit darker purple here. So you can work the same way that you would work with colored pencils. I often, in fact, I mostly work on hot press watercolor paper with my colored pencils. I just find that it takes a beating, and I can do just about anything that I want on it. So you can layer your colors just like you would if you were starting on plain paper. It just gives you that starting point. Also, one thing to note, and I brought it down, I don't think I did. One thing to note is that if you put rubbing alcohol on top to move your colored pencils around, that it will not move the watercolor underneath. So you can work on the dark, you can make it lighter. And because color pencil is transparent, you can see the colors underneath. You can still see what's underneath. It'll shine through. And so you can get that same depth that you can get with color pencil that you can't get with any other medium. And it just speeds things up so much. So you can see that it just really works well on the dark. You can put a dark base down, and you can work from that dark base and come forward with lighter and lighter if you like. So you can also go and smooth your piece out like you would with rubbing alcohol. And it doesn't move the watercolor. That's very cool. That is very cool. And I discovered that by accident, but it does not move the watercolor underneath. So you can still go in and use your rubbing alcohol to blend things and move things around. It's something that I do quite often. If you've got an area where you want to blend two colors in together, you can go in there and put your colored pencil down and blend with your colored pencil instead of trying to do it with the watercolors. So I've been playing around a lot lately with the mixed media, with doing watercolors and colored pencil. And depending on how much colored pencil that I put down on top of my watercolors determines for me whether I call it a watercolor, a colored pencil, or a mixed media. I'm going to show you one that I'm just started here. So I did a wash on this. So this is very, very light. I don't know if you can see this, but this was done in a pour wash. And so I've poured 3 colors down. I'm going to show you how I do that. Unfortunately, the video, I did not have enough room between my camera and my table at the time. So I tried spraying it and it didn't work. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you go to do a pour like I'm going to show you, wet your paper entirely with a brush, really lightly, but quite wet, and then do your pour. I sprayed it and it didn't flow well, and I couldn't move my paper well. So I'm going to just show you the first little video. Hi everybody, we're going to do a pour so I can do some colored pencil on it. I've got my 3 colors here that I'm going to pour. I have quinacridone lilac, and I keep cheap brushes that I can just use over and over again. Here for my mixes, I've got Aureolin yellow. I've always said Aureolin, but apparently it's Aureolin. And those are the 3 colors for my wash. I'm going to set those off to the side, on my left side, because I'm left-handed. That's important. I'm going to spray my paper. My paper is 140 pound hot press Arches paper. I'm going to start with my blue. You can see how thin that
some red in there. And then I'm going to add the yellow. And I'm going to tilt that until it moves all over. Alrighty. And I'm going to let that dry. Just a more solid wash, so I'm just going to cover those up. Those come down. I don't know why that did that this time, but that's my wash.
Okay. When you're doing a pour, you can pour it and let it dry. And then I did one I'm going to show you where I masked out some just basic leaf and grass shapes. And then I did another pour and I masked it again. And then I drew on it. And I didn't, when I was videotaping my process, I lost, I'm just learning with the videos, and I lost one of my videos. So unfortunately I lost the part where I did the extra layer. So I'm just going to show you that, and then I will show you my end product for that one. There we go. So I've done a wash, a really light wash. So it was much like this wash on here. I don't know if you can see it on my where my little part is. So it's very, very, very light. And then I masked in some leaves shapes and some of the grass shapes. And then I did another pour and I put more grass and leaf shapes in there. And then I started with color pencil.
Okay, so this drawing is at the point where I've done the 3 washes in watercolor, and I'm working on the color pencil portion of this drawing. This is kind of it's a negative drawing exercise as well. So every time you do layers like that, you're going to be working in some sort of negative drawing capacity. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to take my little stylus here. And this leaf is going to sit right up on top, but I'm going to give it some color. I'm going to take and I'm just indenting where I want the veins of this leaf to go. I'm going to take this light green and I'm just going to go over that. And bring out those veins. See how that just brings out the, so you're just going over, really lightly over the leaf, and it's not going into where the indents are. I'm just gonna make that a little bit darker. Right down that vein, just bring that out a little bit. Just kind of go with where it takes you. You'll notice that I'm moving my pencil in my hand. What that does is just keeps the point a little longer. I'm just going to make that stand out just a little bit. Create a little bit of a shadow there. So this is the fun part of this drawing. You get to just play. The nice thing is you've eliminated, I've eliminated 3 layers that I would do in colored pencil, and I've done them in watercolor. It's time consuming as well because you have to do a wash, let it dry, do the masking, let it dry, do another wash. And when I'm doing my wash, I'm doing pour washes. So I'm taking and I'm mixing 3 or 4 colors, sometimes 5, but not very often. You don't want to mix too many because you're going to get mud. So I am going in, and you can see I'm just gradually making my own grasses in the background. But it goes a whole lot faster with the when you've done the washes already. So these here were my first layer. So this leaf, these, this leaf, and this leaf were all first. And then I went and did the second layer here and here. And these are mostly second, I think. And then I did a third layer. So this looks like a leaf. This looks like a leaf here. I'm just gonna make this a leaf here. I'm just roughing those in, and I am starting with in some of these places with a dark color rather than build that up, because I know I want that to be quite dark. And here, this is going to be shadow. I'm going to actually start here with this purple here. And just make that stand off the page just a little bit. Just gives you that 3-dimensional look, and it's just so much faster. And it doesn't, the watercolor layers don't really affect the tooth of the paper that much when you're using the colored pencils. It would if I did 20 layers or 10 layers, you would notice a difference in the tooth of the paper. But just 3 layers doesn't make much difference at all. It just really, really speeds up the coloring. All right. I'm going to go back over. I want this to be a little bit darker under this leaf here. See that I've scratched in those veins, and so now even if I'm going over this with this darker pencil, I'm putting just a little bit more pressure on this here. You can see that those veins are still showing up. I don't show that much in the video. You'll just have to trust me. But you don't want to sit here and watch me color all day. But I'm sure that it's really boring to watch. So I'm going to stop this now and I will come back in a minute.
So this is I've worked on it a little bit more. So this is where I'm at with this, and I'm just kind of letting it go where I want it to go. And some of the things I noticed was up here. I had a couple that were going straight across and straight up and down, and it was looking kind of more like a grid. So the great thing about this with the color pencil on top is that you can go in and you can just get rid of those. So you can just play with it until you get what you want. And I've got, maybe I'll put another an hour into it and do some more over here and get some of this built up a little bit, and just kind of unbusy this a little bit down here, and go on from there. But you can see I started out with just a very little masking. Just the few grasses are masked. This leaf, this leaf, this leaf, and this leaf. Oh, this and this too. These two bits were masked. And then the rest of it, I've just been coloring and building it up like that. So that's just one way you can use the colors to do that with. Now I'm going to show you. Oh, somebody just asked me what kind of pencils I'm using. So I use several different brands, and I'll show you the ones I've got out here to use. So this is a Faber-Castell Polychromos. I don't use these very often. They're oil-based. They're harder, but I really like this indigo. It's almost a black. It's not that blue, and I really like it for what I'm doing. So I like the color more than the texture of the pencil. These ones with the ends like this and the silver writing, they are Caran d'Ache Luminance, and the wealth of colors that they have are it's just phenomenal. They've got, for me, the ones that I really, really like are the grade colors. So they got a bunch of the, like this one is a light aubergine. What's this one? Oh, this is the same color. Of course, I pulled out the same color. I like them. They're very expensive. And I also find with these, some of the ones that are like these earth tones, this is Castell's earth. You'll find that they've got hard bits in them. And if you're using soft paper, it will indent your paper. So you have to have a really light touch with these. And if it starts to drag, and you'll know what I mean if you use them, you'll feel it. You can feel it almost scratching the paper. Stop it and sharpen it, and you'll get rid of. Come across another one, but that will stop that bit there. And you can often even see it. It's like a little white hard bit in there. Has to do, I think, with when they're mixing the earth tones. And I think it's just a bit of pigment that's stuck in there. These ones are Derwent Color Soft. I don't use these a lot. Place was going out of business in Toronto, and I just happened to be there, and so I bought a whole bunch of these, but they're not my favorite pencil. I find them a little chalky and not as soft, not as smooth as some of the other pencils. They're just not my favorite, but they're not that expensive, and they work nicely. This is a Prismacolor pencil. I love my Prismacolors. I wish that they were made better. I wish they were made better because they're falling apart. The leads are not staying in the wood. They're breaking. The wood is very rough now because they're using inferior wood. They're making them in Mexico, so they're just not as good a quality. The pencils are still good quality. The actual pencils are still good quality. That's that question. I got another one here. So could you lighten up a dark area on a watercolor painting by using a lighter pencil crayon? You can, to some degree, if you don't expect to be going over it with more, because you almost have to. Here, I will. So like this, this is lighter on a dark, but once you do that, to go back in, say you wanted to build that up, you got to watch how much layers how many layers you put on there. This is actually doing quite well on there. The watercolor paper, the hot press watercolor paper, is so durable. You can get quite a bit out of it, quite a bit more than you expect. I've got I keep my colored pencils in these containers, and I've got 10 or 15 of them up there with all different colors in them. So I kind of brought down a variety of what I thought I would use, and of course I want something that isn't here, so I just won't do that. But you can draw on top, you can shade with it, you can add to it. So if you've got this green here, and you get a green that's similar, you can kind of extend it. And this isn't the right green. This is a little bit more of a yellow green than what's in there. And see, this is what's happening with the Prismacolors. That's one of the reasons that I don't, that I hesitate to buy them. But if you take them, if you find that's happening, if the leads are coming off and you've sharpened it twice and the leads are still coming out, take your colored pencils, and I've been doing this with the new ones that I'm getting, the new colored pencil, because Kensington now is selling the Prismacolors separately now. So I will buy them, I'll take them home, turn my oven on to 200, turn my oven off, put my pencils in there until the oven cools, and then you're not going to get that because the wax is broken inside. The lead is broken inside. And if you do that, the wax melts together, and then they won't break when you sharpen them. I have not used that. Somebody's asking me if I've tried the water-based pencils with a brush on there, the Stettler. I have not tried the Stettler watercolor pencils. I do have watercolor pencils, and I think I might just skip upstairs in a bit when I put the next video on, and I'll grab some of those. So I do a lot of animal portraits, and they take me a fair amount of time. So I have started doing animal portraits with a watercolor base to begin with. And I'm going to show you one I did for this demo today. So I did the pour wash. I've done the wash, the tricolored wash. You can see up here, and I'll talk about that in the video, but I got a little bit of bloom and some hard lines here and stuff. Hi, everybody. So I'm back with the dried piece. So I did the 3-color pour on this, and you can see I ended up with some marks here and some lightness here, some lightness coming down through here. And I'm just going to play with what I've got. And I'm going to just put in a little bit of background here, using basically the same colors in very, very light washes. Only I'm just going to use my brush now because I want to start getting some detail in there so I can work with my pencils. I'm just going to go in and around. She's very fluffy. So the colors I'm using again here are primarily manganese blue, quinacridone lilac, and I'm going to use some quin gold. I just want this to be a little more intense than the Orlin yellow. Just going to let that move around a little bit. I'm going to pick up some of this because it's sitting in a little bit of a divot here, and I'm going to end up with a bloom if I don't pick that up. A little bit of blooming is all right, and we've already got some of that blooming going on, so I'm not too worried if that happens. This is over here is really, really intense. I'm just going to lift a little bit of this and knock that back a bit. That I will go over again later on. Right now I'll leave that. I'm going to start going in with some colors. I'm going to start with the interior so I'm not messing around with the, this is a little bit of raw umber I'm just putting in there. Not too worried about the edges because I will fix those edges with, I'll let that bleed out into that wet yellow there, just a bit. Come in from this side and just wet that a bit. Under these lights, as everything is just drying so quickly, and we live in such a dry place, so that makes a huge difference. I'm just going to be coming in with, I want these to fade away, and I'm just going to do this really, really wet. Those details I will pick up in colored pencil. And very seldom when I'm doing a full color pencil piece use browns. I'll use purples and pinks and yellows, greens, whatever I can find that'll work for what I want to get. Because the value is way more important than the color, always for me. You can see I'm just kind of drawing with the brush more than painting some of these spots. It's actually quite dark, so I'm going to go try not to touch it with my arm on the other side there. It's really dark right around here, so I'm going to just get that in there. Go around the eye. I want to keep these edges soft because I can create hard edges with the colored pencils. I don't need to do that with a paint. See, we are getting a little bit of a bloom over here. That's okay. Let's help this along a little bit. This is where the fur kind of breaks up underneath because she's got such a pack of fur. It is all over my house. These brushes are awesome. They just hold so much water. I love them. The silver black velvet brushes.
Don't worry too much about around the eye because I want to get the details in there with the colored pencil. We're just doing some of the work first.
Have you got masking fluid on that drawing?
Yeah, like I said, I masked. I said at the beginning, I masked some of the first layer out, like I did with the leaves. So I've got some masks on the lightest pictures, the lightest of her. I don't know if you can see that. If you can see my square.
Yeah.
This is my cat. This is what she looks like. So I just did this one. Most of the ones that I've done, they're gone because they were
fur is quite
commissions.
Wow. All right, I'm going to leave this and let it dry, and I'll be back, and we'll start working with colored pencil.
That's the cat that I'm doing. She's my Jenny, and let's see if I have any more questions. Yes, that's a really, really good question. Somebody asked, do you always use transparent primary colors for your pours? I don't always use primary colors. Sometimes I'll use colors that that suit the painting that I'm doing. So if I'm doing a winter scene, I will not always use the 3 primaries. I might use some blue, and I might you know, use 1 or 2 shades of blue and a purple, and just leave it at that, and then add my yellows and stuff in later. Or I might use my yellows and reds and add the cools in later, depending on what I'm doing. This one here that I did of this for this baby, I've got primarily the reds and the yellows, and there's a little bit of blue up here, and it's just not showing up that well on the screen, but it's really, really faint. But here I've started to add some color in colored pencil, but it's just going to cut down. I'll be able to do that in no time. How's everybody doing? Am I putting you to sleep yet?
No, it's good.
No, it's good, Jerry.
Okay, I'm gonna do the next one now, and that's adding the colored pencil. Okay, so I've started working on the eye. I've taken all of the masking off and filled in a little bit to put some more dark in here off screen. I just didn't think you guys wanted to see all of that. So we'll just go ahead with this, finish this eye, and then I'm working on softening the fur with the pencils. So normally a pencil portrait this size for me would take me about 15 to 20 hours. I started this on Monday, and I probably put in about 5 hours, I would think, 4.5, 5 hours by the time it's done. A little tiny bit of purple in this eye. It's colored pencil is not the most exciting thing to watch. You know, it's just not. It's time consuming. There's no way around it. You notice as I move as I color or lay my pencil down, I move my pencil around. Helps me to keep the point a little bit longer. I'm starting to right away use a little bit more pressure on the side because I want to burnish it. I want it to really show as almost liquid.
And that's one of the most important parts. You don't get the eye right. You don't get the animal. And she's got such beautiful eyes. This one. And she's cross-eyed. So it's not how I'm drawing. She's cross-eyed. Very cross-eyed. I'm just going to work her a little bit with the fur around her eyes. I'm going to take my darkest brown I've got is a Cassell's Earth Luminance. Carandash Luminance. And the one thing that I can say with this pencil is that it can damage your paper if you're not careful. So you have to be aware as you're putting it down that that's, let's say I don't have to work as hard with the pencil work because a lot of that work's been done for me already. So these portraits go a lot faster. You get that soft look too. So I'm gonna put some of this dark out here. I'm gonna come in with a lighter color and just keep that softness. You want to make sure that you keep your pencils sharp all the time. That pencil is such a slow process, and it's really quite cathartic. You can really lose yourself when you're working with them and just get lost in the process. More I find than any other medium. Keep your grip on your pencil really light. Don't want to put too much pressure on it. For a couple reasons, it's really, really hard on your hands and your wrists if you do that. And you'll damage the paper if you press too hard. This is pretty durable paper. It's hot pressed watercolor paper, but it works. I really like it for the color pencil pieces because I find that it takes the layers and I can still have that nice smooth surface. And I can use the water, so it's a little more difficult to use water if you're using a different. It's starting to come to life already, really quickly. Let's establish these little hairs that are coming out of her ears here. I will work more on those later, but I just want to get those in there because one interesting thing is the watercolor will just sit on top of the colored pencil. It can't get into the paper because the pencils are wax. So I'm gonna hopefully have enough time to show you this whiskers. You can't, it's really hard to get a really nice straight line. I'm just gonna go actually need a lighter brown. And this is just a light sepia. I will work on shading these whiskers later. Right now I just want to get them. I can get that so soft look on top of the watercolor and still keep the spontaneous look of the watercolor. You have to have a really, really sharp pencil to get those whiskers. I'm gonna just turn my piece here a little bit. So I would carry on with this until those look like I want them to look nice and straight. I'm gonna go on work on this side a little bit, these whiskers, because they're going into lighter fur. And so you don't have to worry as much. It's easier to cover. I love these luminance colors, coloring pencils for doing these really, really subtle shades. They've got a lot of shades, more than anybody else.
I'm just going to skip ahead a little bit in this so I don't put you all to sleep. So you can see now that that I've started and I've got the brown base, and then I'll be using mostly purples. And
Put a
pinks
shadow on that. Oh,
and
no.
oranges for the orange fur. And anybody that wants to see the whole video, just please let me know and I can send it to you. But it's just very long. It's all in real time. I wasn't able to
So I'll just keep building up layer on layer on layer.
to speed it up. My husband can do that, but I don't know.
I can get just as many layers on here as I could before. So if I had left it white, I would just be working all of these layers up in colored pencil, and it would just it takes a long time. And I do that lots, and I will still do that lots. Okay, I'm going to majority of this with colored pencil. So it is really more a colored pencil piece than a watercolor piece. The watercolor was kind of a means to an end to just getting that base down. And I will come back and complete the other eye and just show you how I integrate some of the, soften it out a little bit. I will see you in a few minutes.
All right, this is where I'm at with that now. So I still have a little bit of more work to do over here. Soften those colors and get some more lights in there. Just bring out some more cream colors back into here. Oftentimes I will leave, I wanted to take this a little bit further, but oftentimes I will leave it at the stage that I left it at the end of this video. So oftentimes I will leave, I will leave a lot of this stuff in here on this end like this, and then just do the face and have this all fade out. For this demo, I just wanted to show you how far you can go with the pencils on top. So I've taken it this far, and to do this in colored pencil would probably take me, up 20 hours or so, and this has taken me, or even maybe 30 hours, and this has only taken me I'm gonna say 8 to 10. So I've got this now, and it's watercolor pencil I put on top of this eye. So I rough the eye in watercolor, and I'm just gonna take this watercolor pencil that I put on and go over it with a brush. This brush is a number 16. And I will use this for the finest detail. Somebody asked me what size brush this is. This is a 16. This will hold me. Excuse me. This will hold enough paint to do a wash on a 10 by 10 sheet, no problem. But you can see now how with the colored pencil, how fast that goes. So then you can take, once that's dry, you can take, or even just before it's quite dry, you can go back in and move that around a bit. And then I would just wait until that's dry and go back in and it's really, really wet, and finish that eye up with regular colored pencils, but it's pretty wet. And I wanted to show you just a little bit of how it works, how the color pencils work on cold press paper. So it's quite different in that the paper is rougher and you have to press a little bit harder. So you want to get some of these trees in a little darker and a little more like you're drawing. You can just put them in. Add so much depth to these. See if I can't fix that camera so it's showing up a little bit better. You're a little bit closer. So you can get quite a bit of color in there. So it also takes some of these nice vibrant colors and you can get some land down. I really like to take a few colored pencils with my watercolors if I'm going out to plein air paint, because you can get some really interesting pictures done. This is actually a watercolor that I did plein air painting. Just a very quick sketch. I actually did a pastel of this one as well. My problem is being left-handed, I just drag my hand through everything I've just done. So I don't know if pastels will ever be my thing, but they're fun. So they work. I'm going to just bring that up so you can see that you can kind of see the texture of the pencil on this watercolor paper, because it's just so much rougher. Let's say I want to put some highlights over here on this tree. So you can go back in and get some of those lights back in with the color pencil. How dry is this? I'm going to just dry this off quickly. Okay, it's fairly dry enough. Okay, so the color pencil, or the watercolor pencil that I used, was really intense on that blue. So I'm gonna bring that down a little bit with a regular colored pencil. So you can go back in and just tone that down. I'm gonna bring it back up because I was taken from my son, and he's got incredibly blue eyes. But I like to leave a little bit of that watercolor look there. I really kind of like that. His eyes are almost an aqua color. I've got for greens down here. I'm gonna go in with this purple. Well, you can see you can really, can you disguise the texture on cold press paper? Yep. So just the harder you press. So this is cold press paper, and if you want to disguise or not have it show up, you just have to, if you're light, you're going to get the bumps showing through, but if you press, you just have to press harder. And if you need it to be lighter and you need to press harder, then you just need to take a lighter colored pencil and press hard. So you can disguise it. You can also, put more details. Just play. Tone. One thing I really like is that you can go in, if your colors are brighter than you want them to be, you can go in and just tone them down a bit. Although this is a Mexican tourist stall, souvenir stall, so everything is very bright. Bring some light back in. That's the nicest part with these, is that you can go in where, say you've got a little bit too dark. You can go in and bring that light back. So you can play with the I'm sorry, I'm just reading a comment here. Oh, I'm glad, so glad that I've got you going. It's sometimes in these times it's so hard to get out of being stuck. I've been stuck watching the news, which is just so bad. And I found for myself, just even getting ready for my classes and getting ready for the demos really helps me to get going and get out of my rut. But this is a lot of things you can try. Hot press paper works best with the watercolor and the color pencil, but you can see it almost glows on top of the watercolor, the color pencil. It just really picks up everything. And I could go on and finish that eye, but I don't need to do that. So if you have any questions, please unmute yourself. We can talk now, and I'd like to hear anything you have to say.
Sherry?
Yes?
I put in for you, have you tried the Staedtler pencils? They have a lead protection, which prevents them from breaking so much.
No, no, I haven't. I haven't used the Staedtler pencil, like for just the colored pencils, or the watercolor pencils.
No, the colored pencils.
No, I haven't used those. I will try them. I've tried just about everything out there. There's a whole bunch of new ones on the market, and I'm finding that for the most part they're disappointing. But mostly that's because I'm set in my ways. I've been using these colored pencils for, oh God, I don't even want to say how long. I've been using colored pencils for probably 40 years.
Wow.
So there's a lot you can do with them. I started using colored pencils in art college because it was just easy to carry around and whatnot. And then I abandoned them for a long time in favor of other mediums, and played around with some acrylics for a bit and pastels, and I abandoned acrylics early on because back then acrylics were not the same beast that they are now. Any of you that have been using them for a while, like acrylics they were just horrible 40 years ago. And they are so much nicer to use now. But I did oils when I left art college for a while, because they wouldn't allow us at the time to use oils in art college. So when I left, it was kind of a rebellion. I was going to use oils because I could, and I really enjoyed them. But I find that they are just way too smelly for the house that I'm in now. It's just there's just not enough room for oils. The whole house smells like oils when I use them. So I don't. I use pastels for a while. So I've kind of bounced around, and then recently I've just, I've been doing a lot of the alcohol inks, and I keep getting pulled back into that. Yeah, I hope that you try that with the pouring and the colored pencils and all that you can do with that. It's so much fun. If you're frustrated at all with colored pencils, you'll find that putting down that layer of watercolor just makes all the difference in the world.
Sherry, one question. You mentioned watercolor pencil and color pencil.
Yeah.
They seem to be different. So can you elaborate on that? Maybe
Absolutely.
It's a stupid question, but
it's not at all a stupid question. And I will tell you, Eva, that I often use watercolor pencils I use them dry. Because they have more pigment in them and they're not bound by wax as much. There's a little bit of wax, but they're not bound by wax. So you'll find if you're doing something like this and you're working dry and you've got a watercolor pencil and you go in to get a dark, see how creamy and dark that is instantly?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a watercolor pencil.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like laying down watercolor on top. And so I will use them dry, but when I use watercolor pencils, one good thing to know about watercolor pencils is you do not want to use them on wet paper, because what happens is the water gets sucked up inside the shaft, and you'll find if you do that often enough, right about here, you'll sharpen your pencil and there'll be no lead left. There'll be no pencil.
Okay.
Because it's soaked into the wood and it comes up and then it just dissolves into the wood.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll come back further up, but you will lose your pencil for a bit. They work really well together. Like I'll start with watercolor pencil. I used to use, this is my watercolor pencils. These are all watercolor pencils. And I used to use them a lot when I was doing illustrations. Because you can do a quick little flower. And then just wet it.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to do a lot of that sort of thing when I was illustrating. And I don't do a lot of illustration work anymore, so I really don't use them that much anymore. But I do, like I said, really like them, the dark colors for filling in. And also, if you're working on the watercolor and you've got a watercolor pencil, now these, I'm going to talk brands of watercolor pencils here for a second. These are Prismacolor watercolor pencils. They're just crap. It's the one thing that I would never stand behind is the Prismacolor watercolor pencils. But if you're going to use them dry on watercolor you've already got down, then they sit right on top so nicely, like total coverage.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you've gotten some watercolor pencils and you find that you're just not using them, because I find a lot of people will get watercolor pencils when they're not sure of their brushes. And then as soon as they get used to their brushes, then they stop using their watercolor pencils. Because it's no longer easier. They can do just as good with their brushes. So, but to use the watercolor pencils on watercolor that's already done, it really is, you get more coverage, and they're quite bright because they're just total pigment, right? So they've got more pigment in them than the actual colored pencils do.
Well, thank you. That's a great demo. I really liked it. Learned a lot.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think I'm done. If nobody has any more questions, are we good? I sure can't wait to come and see you all in person again. I miss that. I miss having an audience.
Oh my goodness.
Well, it's so hard to tell, when you're doing something like this. I'm going to put my face back up. When you're doing something like this, it's really hard to gauge the audience and see what people are thinking and when to stop and when to go and all of that stuff. It just kind of takes that all away from you, but it is nice to see everybody's faces. I'm really really miss seeing people's faces.
We
Okay.
miss yours too, Sherry. And you did a
Sherry?
good job.
Okay, Sherry. Okay, Sherry, I would just like to say thank you very much for your demo. I can tell that everybody enjoyed it and we learned a lot. And like I say, I just love the way you make your backgrounds with your washes. They create such a soft, appealing background, like even for your leaves or your cats and whatnot. Everything was just so interesting and amazing. I don't use watercolor, but it makes me want to think, maybe I should try it.
Pouring is a lot of fun. It's a lot of work. Like if you've got, if you're doing it in layers and masking, it can be a lot of work. Some of the results that you can get are just phenomenal. An artist to look up is Linda Baker, uses primarily pouring. And some of her stuff is, just a second, I'll just show you some of the stuff she does.
Sherry,
Yep.
while you're looking her up, you said you told us about the Prisma watercolors. What brand do you like or prefer?
Derwent.
Derwent?
Not the Inktense. I like the Inktense. They have their place. The Derwent Inktense are very well, they're unnatural colors.
Yes.
I've got some I can show you, but they're very neat.
Intense.
Yeah, fluorescent almost.
Yeah.
But
No, some of the Inktense ones, but you would just you'd recommend the Derwent watercolor pencils?
Derwent watercolor pencils, yeah.
Great, thanks.
Okay, this is some of Linda Baker's stuff. So all of hers, she uses several washes. She'll do up to 10 washes, but she layers, like she puts a wash down and then she masks, and then she puts another wash down and then she masks. And yeah, she gets some pretty interesting stuff with her washes. Like this one, you can tell the wash that she's got there. So but this with the shadows and stuff, I think they're just amazing. And so I'm going to be playing around with that. This is another one of hers, and sadly these high detail ones are still the ones that attract me and say, oh, I want to do that. I wish that I wanted to do, something a little more abstract or a little looser like this, but I'm just always drawn. I think the inks let out my loose side, and
when you make the washes, Sherry, what kind of container do you put the paint in?
Oh, it depends on the size that I'm doing. I have little cups, plastic cups that I had when the kids were little. They're brightly colored. They might even be Tupperware, I'm not sure, but they're colored orange, red, and blue. I've got the 3 colors. So I will mix my blues in the blue cup, and then I know when I'm pouring a big pour what I'm reaching for. Or I'll use clear plastic, but I've got the colors the cups that I've got in colors. If I'm using 3 blues, then I'm not worried about what color I put down. It's just a very random thing. And
How do you, what's the proportion of paint to water?
so
for that?
that's kind of a something that you have to play around with yourself. One thing is you can never get it too thin. You can always put another layer, right? You can always put another wash on top. So I would err on the side of thin. So if you can put it down here, I'll actually show you on my palette. So if you have your wash, and you pour your wash out onto a palette to test it, you'll get to the point really fast where you know basically how thick your wash is. So if you take and you pour your wash onto your palette, you want it to be about this thin for your first wash. And what I do, and I got this from Linda Baker, she does the same thing. What I'll do is for my second and my third pours, I just leave my container, I mix up enough for 3 pours. And I will just leave enough in my, leave my containers out for the time it takes for my first wash to dry, which is usually overnight. And then when you go to use your wash again, especially here in Calgary where it's dry, you'll find that enough has evaporated that you'll have a good consistency for your second wash. So your second wash can be a little bit thicker and your third wash can be thicker still. So keep all the paint that pours off. So pour it into a big tray, and then you can pour it into a container. And this, so I've got this here, and this is the from the washes that I did, and it's drying in there. I can use that color still, and it's just a mixture of the 3 colors, predominantly red at this point, but it gives you a nice dull, like grayed down color. So this is the color that it is. And that looks brighter on here than it actually is. It's kind of a dull red. But I would reuse that on a consecutive pour. And you don't need to get really expensive watercolors to pour with if you're doing that, because it's, you're not worried about how much pigment is in there. You're just laying down a wash. So if you do have some Cotman or some student brands, that's the place to use it, is use it in your washes.
So when you capture the first pouring, like you showed us there, do you mix the other, like that looked more like your rosy red, so if you wanted yellow and blue again, would you mix them again?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Or I would pour a little bit into here to get the gray that I want, because this is actually quite a contaminated color, and you can see it just doesn't mix all that well. I don't know, you can't really see in there, but the yellow is kind of sitting on top in there, and it's not mixed in. You can see it in there. I wish you could see it.
Actually, I did. You held it to the camera at one point that I could see it.
Awesome. So yeah, so that's what happens is you can see the colors in that are mixed in there. So they still separate. So you can put, a little bit of blue in there and get it a little more muddied down or a little darker. I will often end off with an indigo, just a straight plain indigo wash after I've masked everything off.
And all transparent colors, I assume?
All transparent colors. If you use opaque colors, if you don't use any CADs, don't use any earth tones, no browns, no sepias, no, no CAD colors because they're just too opaque and you're going to get, there's going to look chalky. This only works well with the transparent colors. The thing about this is you can use phthalos because you can really water them down, get such a vibrant wash that's
Great.
light enough that you can cover over.
Wow, that sounds good. Thanks.
So Sharon, I think I'll just answer. I think I answered that, but I'm going to answer it again. Derwent watercolor pencils are my favorite watercolor pencil.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, but that's this. I think this is. Now you can see that it's kind of a dull, and you can actually see the bits of yellow,
Yeah.
and blue in there.
Little speckles.
So when you put another wash over top of that, it just gets darker and darker. So, I recommend that you try it because it's so much fun to do those. And if you're working on something like this, it's really, really light. And now I can just go in there and start putting the tones for her face in. I've started here somewhat. I'm just starting to, make her face look round. So I can go in there but I can also, I don't have to do work as tightly as you do if you are just putting down colored pencil on its own, because you've already got that base. So you can play a little bit and get those shades to come out really quickly, way quicker than you would if you were using just colored pencil. How's that? Any more questions? Where are we here?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank
Yeah.
you very much.